8, 9, 10. Hello everybody and welcome back. Apologies for the interruption in the connection, but we're back live. Again, like I said, welcome to ISRL Esports. This is Season 5, this is Division 2, and we're here in short qualifying. We just had a little bit of technical difficulties. We have about 9 minutes remaining in the session right now, and it's Nazareth is currently the fastest man on track at 114.023 is the time to beat Krishna. About 5/10 off of that time already. CRL Will sitting in third, about 6/10 off. And ISRL Knight, who was originally a Div 1 driver, moving down to Div 2, the competition getting stiffer. ISRL Knight will be starting in 4th position at the moment, and he is just letting by a Haas. And I believe that was Lorenzo, who is on... No, I believe actually that might have been Will. Yep, Will, who's coming around the final turn, about to start a lap. Fall Monkeys, we're riding on board with the Haas driver. Give us a little lap here around the Hungaroring.
Of course. So happy to be here as Will heads down the braking zone into the first corner. That about 180-degree turn down the hill now towards turn 2. You gotta want to stay out of that left-hand curve. Very easy to lose the car. Quickly on the power now as you head towards down the hill into one of the more difficult corners of the track. You want to carry a lot of speed through that left-hander. Will maybe could carry a little bit more, but you don't want to go too wide either. Watch that curve on the right-hand side with the next corner into the chicane now to start probably the most difficult section of the track. Sector 2 here, which is very technical this year as it's been years past. A lot of left, right, left that the drivers are taking, and you gotta want to nail it perfectly, or else you can risk sending that car into the wall or at minimally losing a lot of time. Making it through it is Will. Through into Sector 3 now. Only a few corners to go. A couple U-turn type corners, starting with this left-hander, the penultimate corner, and now, of course, the right-hander around the final corner. Quickly on the power on the exit, you can take a bit of a wider line towards the start-finish line, and Will doing it 4/10 faster than his previous lap time. It's a 1:14.2, immediately getting knocked down to third as Knight sets a much faster near 1:14.2, and Krishna now with a 1:14.100, setting a quicker time right behind there. So lots of fast times coming through now in this section, in this stage of qualifying, as we're already starting to approach near the end here.
It's Nazareth, just went down by about 11 hundredths of a second through the first sector. He's now coming through that technical Sector 2 now. As you said, lots of left, rights, a lot of curbs. Curbs a lot more deadly on this game than previous years, and you can send your car spinning off. But look at, oh my goodness, Nazareth, I'm not too sure if that was on purpose, but he took a pretty weird line coming into that super fast right-hander, almost flat right-hander in these current cars. But he took a lot of grass right there. Actually, he did invalidate his car. It looked like he kept at least 2 wheels on the track, but nonetheless, Nazareth still holds on to provisional pole position with that 14.023. We have Krishna in second, Knight in third, fourth for Will, Dark sitting in fifth, D-Morts is in sixth position, J. Will's 40 in seventh, Kind of Blind Cozy from Division 4 reserving in here. He is in eighth position, Lorenzo in ninth, Kam Koala in 10th position, and Jordan is still on an outlap, has not set a time. Kam Koala as well has not set a time in this session, but now comes Jordan across the line. And let's see how the REL driver is going to go from the Relentless team as he breaks into turn 1. Goes pretty wide, actually misses quite a bit of the apex right there, hitting the DRS. That opens the rear flap from the rear wing, increasing your miles per hour by about 10 to 11 miles per hour in these current cars as he's flinging it through the chicane of the first sector. And going a little bit too wide out of the exit before he came up to this almost blind left-hand turn. And right now it's an invalidation. Jordan still without a valid time, and there's only about 5 minutes left to go in the session.
Yep, and an unfortunate invalidation for Jordan here. As you said, 5 minutes to go in the session. Not too much time left here to get that that ideal lap time set. But there is still some time to, if Jordan wants to dive into the pits, get that fresh set of tires on, and go for one more time. But for drivers like Jordan and Calm Koala, who have yet to put anything on the board, they're starting to hit that moment where they're really going to want to be perfect around their flying laps here to maximize where they start. Albeit it is preseason, some kinks are to be worked out here with the new drivers, the new cars, but definitely not a good confidence booster when you're starting the race here at the back of the grid, like it seems thus far. Now, one of the things I'm noticing as well, and I did notice that through the entirety of short qualifying, it seems like everybody is opting for these soft tires here to set their qualifying time. So nobody really trying to make that risk to go on to the medium tires and try to go a little bit longer. Now,
and Lorenzo's had a crash.
Oh,
in Sector 2. So Lorenzo's out of the session, only sitting in 9th position. He still would have that position, but there's 2 drivers about times. Kind of Blind Cozy has gone fastest in the 2nd sector, meanwhile. So look at this Division 4 driver right now, looking very strong right now as he's about to come through the penultimate turn right here, keeping off of the curb. Now about to come through the final turn. Again, keeping it close to the exit. He's pinging the power down as he comes across the line. This is going to be a nice time, I think. It's still going to be a nice time. It only goes ahead of Lorenzo, though, but you have to say, kind of Blind Cozy putting in some nice work there as he cuts across the Aston Martin of Calm Koala there. That was a little dangerous, and that could have caused an accident right there. But kind of Blind Cozy, even if it's not ahead of 7th, 6th, it's so very close to Division 2 times. He has to be very happy with himself. It's not super far up the grid, but it's still a nice position to be in nonetheless. Calm Koala was saying, and Jordan, we're going to be getting a full wet race. So once again, the rain is shooting down here in Hungary. We've had 2 wet weather Grand Prix so far, and we're about to have another one, ladies and gentlemen. So hold on to your butts. It's about to get very interesting here. We have 11 drivers on the grid. I'm hoping that the rain does not hamper too much of our fun here in this Division 2 race. You're watching live coverage of the preseason race in Season 5 from Division 2. We're here at the Hungaroring for the Hungarian Grand Prix, and I think some drivers are quite happy to be racing this track on the preseason only. And if you're enjoying the live stream, make sure to leave a like on the live stream. Make sure to subscribe to ISRL Esports. And thank you to all of our partners. Advanced Sim Racing, who just joined us. IMB Racewear, Jackson Protection Agency, and IFEA. You are the guys that help us keep going and keep on this amazing competition. Thank you so much. We have about 1:40 left to go in the session, and there's still some times coming across the board. As it looks like Nazareth.
That was Demort's. Sorry,
Demort's out? Yeah.
Yeah, out on the exit of turn 4. I think that's right where Jay Wills is going through right now. Might have just clipped that curb a little bit too much on the exit, lost control of the car. And for Demort's, that's going to be a P7 at best for him here.
Look at, meanwhile, ISRO Dark. He's gone fastest. And look at Knight, 13.9. Fastest. We know the man is strong in Hungary, and Dark has invalidated that lap. That's going to be it for him in qualifying, unless he can get another lap going. No, he's going to go into the pit lane, but ISRO Knight has put it on pole in the Alpine, and I know for a fact ISRO Knight was not wanting to drive the blue, white, and red car right here. He's not been a fan of the Renault team in the past, and it's not much too different with Alpine, but at the moment, he's on provisional pole position. It's Nazareth, meanwhile, is going for another lap. He is in P2 at the moment. It is hundredths of a second separating those 2 drivers. Can Nazareth take back the pole within the last 30 seconds of this qualifying session? The time will expire. Drivers on a lap will be able to finish their lap, but if you come across over the line, you will not be able to do it. Jay Wells far away from his teammate, 114.733. ISRO Dark retires from the session within the pit lane. He he is done in this qualifying session. At the moment, P5. We'll see if he stays there. Duwill, faster in the second sector by about, faster in the second sector. He's actually purple in the second sector. So a lot of purple second sectors in this qualifying session. Meanwhile, Nazareth has had a spin, I think, and that is it for him. He is not going to be making it on pole position. Will Duwill upset the runs, though, as he comes across the line. He has a big moment and a big crash on the start-finish line, and that's it for Duwill. He spun the car out of the exit into the Armico barrier, and that is it for Duwill. Will Krishna be able to have anything to say about it as he goes very wide coming out of the first sector right there, out of that uphill left-hander where those big gray sausage curves are. Krishna sitting in third position in the Ferrari. Not a usual place they qualify in, but we'll see how it goes. Div 2, sorry, haha. I've been saying a few times, messed it up this one time. Meanwhile, looks like it's not been a big improvement so far for Krishna. We'll see if he can have a very strong Sector 3, as there is only 3 drivers active. Kind of Blind Cozy is actually going to finish P8 in this qualifying session. Great job by him in this Div 2 race. A very wide exit, and that's it for Krishna. ISRL Knight has put it on pole in Division 2. There's your man fastest in the qualifying session. Nazareth in second, Krishna in third, fourth for Duwill, ISRL Dark in fifth, J Will 40 in sixth, Demorts in seventh, Kind of Blind Cozy in eighth, ninth for Ariel Jordan, Lorenzo in 10th, and Kam Koala is in 11th position. That is it for qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to see how it goes. Now, the big question is, were drivers on dry setups or wet setups? Because in my opinion, it's always been a dry setup does not work in the wet. A wet setup can work in the dry if you're fast enough. But dry setups on a wet track do not work. And setups more important than ever on this current game. I'd be interested to see whether or not ISRL Knight, who has put it on pole here in this first preseason race, put on a dry setup to achieve that pole position time.
Yeah, and I know at least in Knight's case, he's been doing a little bit of practice in the weights in the wet weather, I should say. But it does lead to think whether or not he does have that wet weather setup. But of course, we are still early on into the game's life cycle, so I do think drivers or a lot of drivers might only have the one setup to go to for now as that hybrid between the two. So we'll have to see how this is all going to play out once we do kick into the race, which, oh my goodness, it is looking absolutely soaked out there.
It is a monsoon here in the Hungaroring. The puddles are everywhere. Some aquaplaning in the pit lane. I think we may have to work on the draining system here in the Hungaroring, but 10 seconds until session start time. Not a lot of time to wait for the formation lap. We'll go over the grid order one more time. And I don't think I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, but every driver will be starting on the heavy, wet, blue-walled wet tires as ISRL Knight gets us going in this qualifying session, after this qualifying session for these 35 laps around the Hungaroring. But it is ISRL Knight who has moved down to Division 2 and has subsequently taken a pole position here today in the first race, beating Nazareth by hundredths of a second, a 13.995. Your pole position here today by Knight. Nazareth in second position with Krishna in third. Duwill will be starting in fifth position in the Haas. ISRL Dark in the Mercedes is going to round off your top 5. Jay Wills in sixth position in the other Alpine, far away from his teammates, see if he can make up some positions. Dean Bortz in the Red Bull in seventh. Kind of Blind Cozy is a reserve here as he came in from Div 4 into Div 2. You have to say, pretty happy with that qualifying session. Was right in the thick of it of the times. He has out-qualified Ariel Jordan in ninth position, Lorenzo in 10th position, and Kam Koala sitting in 11th position, your final person in the grid today. We saw a crazy start in the real-world Hungary race from Valtteri Bottas hitting the back of one of the McLarens of Lando Norris. We'll see if we get some of the same shenanigans here. Braking zones quite a bit different in the wet track. How do the drivers manage that start?
Honestly, I think off the start, you want to get up into ideally a higher gear, keep those revs as low as possible, getting off the line. But of course, stick to the game plan is what I would say. You know where those braking zones are. The last thing you want to be doing is you don't want to be braking late, but you also don't want to be braking way too early and losing out on so many positions when it is your best opportunity to get an advantage when all the cars are bunched together. And last but not least, be patient. It's wet, it's horrible conditions for everybody, not just you, so be patient, wait for that driver to make a mistake, and when that mistake does happen, you want to make sure to capitalize on that mistake.
Kam Koala pretty far away from the rest of the pack as they've all gone into their grid position slots, but the Aston Martin driver is going to line up into that position right there, and we're going to get ready to go for the Division 2 race. Getting ready for those 5 red lights. It's Division 2, it's the preseason, and it's 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's time to bring the action! And it's a pretty long lights, but they're out, and away we go. And ISRL Knight gets a good start across the line, and he's already going to cut across Nazareth in P2. He's alongside the Ferrari of Krishna, who's going to go in around the outside, and he's going to go far off track, and he's going to find some Narnia over there out of turn 1, but he's back on track, and he's still ahead of Nazareth, and into P2 is going to go Krishna. Dark is in 4th position. Jay Wills, I think, has had a great start. He's actually, I think, in 5th position. No, sorry, the leaderboard is not updated very correctly, but nonetheless, and here we go, it's updating again. So Jay Wills still in 6th. Will in 5th position, Dark in 4th, Nazareth down to 3rd, Krishna in 2nd, but oh, here we go. Krishna has a very wide line off track, and he's going to get bogged down a little bit. He's already unstable, and now look at this. Nazareth might be challenging on the inside. Not a usual overtaking. Oh, big crash! Krishna's out of the race! Have they had contact? They were side by side. It's a virtual safety car. Will we move to a full safety car? A big crash for Krishna. He's out of this race already. I did not see the onboard. Was there contact between the two?
Yes, I was actually riding on board with Nazareth right as that was happening. There was a little bit of contact with the both of them as Nazareth was trying to get alongside, given that Krishna, I'll be honest, wasn't looking all that comfortable in these wet weather conditions through the start of the race. You saw had a great jump off the line, but went very deep into turn 1, was able to make it through, but just wasn't looking like he had that car under control. You spoke about that big moment going into Sector 2. Nazareth thought he could capitalize on it, but unfortunately Krishna just found that grip. They went alongside, but just unfortunately going into that corner, 2 would not go, only 1 would go, and for Krishna, unfortunately, it was the worst case scenario for him, as he lost the car, went into the wall, and that's the end of his race.
And Lorenzo has been given a drive-through penalty. He sped up a little bit too fast on the restart, and Lorenzo has a drive-through penalty early on in this race. But meanwhile, we are back. Green flag racing here in the Hungaroring. It's the preseason race in Division 2, and ISRL Knight currently leads. And Jordan has been given a 5-second penalty for ignoring yellow flags. Looks like he's made an overtake on Jay Wills under yellow flag, so he's been given a 5-second penalty, and that is something he's going to have to serve on his next pit stop. So already the makings of a boring wet race is the penalties may be giving us some big gaps at the moment. The scorecard is not showing us the gaps we really want to see, because apparently Dark is back by 1 minute and 43 seconds. They have fixed nothing in the spectator mode. Meanwhile, Nazareth 2.8 seconds back from ISRL Knight. He is running away with this Hungarian Grand Prix already. We're only on lap 2 of the Grand Prix. Let's bring up the telemetry right here as we're on board with ISRL Knight as he's coming around the final turn in that very distinctive gold, red, and white helmet right there. Not very much of the Alpine colors, but again, probably wasn't too happy to be racing in the Alpine. 135.553, that's currently the fastest time on the board in this wet weather race. ISRL Knight, though, currently leading this Hungarian Grand Prix. Nazareth in 2nd, Dark in 3rd, Jordan in 4th position. Will, he's getting quite close to the back of Jay Wills. He may be looking to try to make an overtake. So very difficult in these wet conditions to make an overtake, but if you make mistakes, then you could find yourself in a position to get a spot up. And I'm sure the drivers will be taking every advantage they can. Cozy, I think he's had a spin, and he does not have his front wing. Cozy has had a crash of some kind. Not too sure if there was contact of somebody, but he is without a front wing on that McLaren, and he's going to have to go into the pit lane to replace it. Such a good qualifying session. Unfortunately, at the moment, he is probably going to be last after the pit stop. Lorenzo only back by 18 seconds. Duwill, meanwhile, has had a severe collision with Demorts, I think. Where is Demorts? Does he have...
He's in
I'm
the
not too
Red
sure
Bull.
what happened.
Appears to be right behind Duwill.
Oh, there
It
is some
must have
front
been.
wing damage, though, for Duwill. On the left end plate, there is without an end plate on that Haas. So severe collision, 5-second penalty. Some very severe collisions and some very severe penalties being given out. And it looks like the Red Bull of Demorts is already sizing up an overtake, and I think Duwill just may let him pass because he knows he has to make a pit stop right now. Wet weather conditions, it's already hard enough to control the car as is, but without a end plate, your turning ability severely hampered. Meanwhile, Kam Koala, he's on the back of Demorts, and he'll be using all that overtake he can to try to get a pass. But again, even with the overtake, it is so much more difficult. Is he going to go for a dive? This was a... Oh, Demorts, I think, was a little bit apprehensive about Kam Koala, and he gave him a lot of room to make a dive there, and it was almost a side-by-side battle coming up into turn number 3, but it didn't quite happen, as Demorts is still in 6th position, and he's leading by about 0.5 of a second. Meanwhile, Nazareth has caught up to Knight. It's now 1.6 seconds, so Knight's advantage in the lead has been brought down quite a little bit right here. And Nazareth sitting in 2nd position, Dark in 3rd position, Jordan in 4th, and Jordan's actually had an off-track excursion. He's back by 4.4 seconds. The drivers are very not too comfortable here in this wet weather conditioned race.
No, especially with the first race, or the first official race, or the first true race going into this league race. You're seeing a little bit of rest from a lot of the drivers here, and already here with the wet weather conditions, the gaps have started to form. Drivers are essentially battling. They've got maybe one driver they're battling with, as you can see. Say Jordan with Jay Wills, they're having a little bit of a battle. Then a little bit further behind, Demorts and Conquala. But oh my goodness, what happened to Knight?
He's out! He's had a crash! He must have had a bad exit! Disaster for ISRL Knight. Full safety car deployed. Nazareth currently leads this Grand Prix. Knight must have had a spin coming out of the final turn. He was losing quite a bit of time to Nazareth. Maybe not as comfortable as he would have liked to have been, but Knight, who had an amazing qualifying session, got it on pole, is out of the Hungarian Grand Prix. That is it for the Alpine driver. Nazareth, who was looking to possibly get on pole after that late pole position grab by Knight, has found himself in the lead of this Grand Prix. Dark is sitting in 2nd position, a great improvement for him. Jordan up to 3rd position right now, given a 5-second penalty, but still very good from Jordan, Dark, and Nazareth. They're up positions. Kam Koala in 6th, but Knight is out of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and he will not be happy about that one.
Oh no, definitely not, and I can hear the frustration on the pit wall from Knight after the incident. But as you were saying, I think Nazareth starting to close up that gap was really giving Knight a little bit of pressure, and that first inkling, that first true sense of pressure that Knight had felt here in this what is still a very young race here around the Hungaroring. And I think with that pressure, Knight just trying to maximize his exit around the final corner. It does make or break your run to the to turn 1 if you can get on the power as early as possible. But unfortunately, maybe a mix of just getting a little bit too angsty on the acceleration pedal along with that curb, just sending that car for a ride. And of course, there is a reason in a way why they call this Monaco without walls, even though that wall is very close on the right hand side there down the start finish straight.
Kind of blind Cozy. He's had a crash in the safety car. He has crashed on track. What has happened? I don't know if he retired on track, but I think he may have had a spin under safety car trying to catch up, and he is out So a bit of a Grosjean moment from kind of Blind Cozy. He is out of the Hungarian Grand Prix as well. The cars are dwindling in the session right now, and we've had 3 retirements so far. Krishna, a first lap accident. ISRL Knight is out after a spin out of the final turn, and kind of Blind Cozy, I didn't see the accident, but it looks like he's out as well. And I think he may have had an accident of his own right, but nonetheless, what a crazy scene we have here, as most of the pack has caught up so far. Nazareth sitting in first position with Dark in second. Jordan has not pitted yet. He sits in third. You don't really have to pit for quite a while. There's no mandatory pit stop, as the drivers are on the wet tires. They don't have to move on to the dries in the session, nor would they want to, but they don't have to go to inters either if they didn't want to. But Jay Will sitting in fourth. Good positions for him. D-Mort's up to P5. Com Koala in sixth. Lorenzo is still trying to catch up, and so is Do Will. Do Will, he's had a pretty shocker of a Grand Prix right here. Had a decent qualifying session. He's now sitting last of all the drivers. There's no real points on the board. It's just to have a fun preseason race, but he is within the points at the moment. But Do Will, not the race he would have liked to have. Both of the Haas's, much like in the real world of Formula 1, are right up on the rear of the pack. But we know these two drivers, with equal cars, very much have the ability to improve their position in this Grand Prix. But we're under safety car conditions right now. ISRL Knight has had a big accident. He has put out the safety car. And we have 8 drivers remaining, 6 laps. It's about to be 7 laps out of 35 remaining in this, or as well as, well, yeah, 7 laps done, so a few more laps to go. A long time to go in this race. With the rain, the times take quite a lot longer to get around the track.
Yep, a bit of a slower lap time here, but of course there's still racing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from the gods. We're gonna restart the race. Knight is making executive decision. He needs to get back in the race right here. So we're gonna have a restart. Totally not the admin abuse of power. But yeah, we're gonna restart the race. I'm sure the trolls in the chat will love to hear that one, and they'll be crying about it. But nonetheless, Nazareth is leading the Grand Prix. You know who you are. You know who you are. Nazareth leading the Grand Prix. We're still under safety car. No sign of the safety car getting called in. It's a little early for a call in from the safety car. But so far, your thoughts in this race?
I mean, honestly, it's really just a matter of, not making mistakes. It's a lot easier said than done in this in these full wet conditions. But when I'm looking at the grid here, right, I'm looking at drivers like, let's say Jordan, who didn't quite have the best qualifying in his short qualifying. Even to an extent, Com Koala, who didn't even get a lap time set. They just managed to keep things clean here through the entirety of the race, and they've worked their way up to decent positions. So it seems like as long as you're sticking to what you have to do, not making mistakes, and
Com Koala just made one because he hit the back of looks like D-Mort's, and he's picked himself a 5-second penalty. So Com Koala, he did not heed your a little commentator's curse there from
very quickly. Very quickly the commentator's curse kicking in here, but it looks like
he's really kicking the back at D-Mort's. I'm not really too sure why he's doing. Oh, well, the safety car's in, that's why. I'm stupid. Well, the safety car's in. The green flag racing. Nazareth leads this Grand Prix. Com Koala is already had a spin, and he was really on the back at D-Mort's, and he's had a big spin. Meanwhile, Nazareth still leading this Grand Prix 9/10ths of a second. It's been a horrible restart for me. I've had a crash in the brain. But Dark is in second position, Jordan in third, Jay Wills in fourth, D-Mort's in fifth. And, well, it's about the most boring restart possible, as they're all the drivers nowhere near an overtake from each other. But Nazareth still leading the Grand Prix 1.1 seconds at the moment.
No, but I think seeing those early accidents might have let some of the drivers think maybe I'll be a little bit more cautious off of this restart, not try to push anything, not try to take any penalties, not try to take anybody out. But right as we're saying that, it looks like Do Will was able to gain a few positions, already back up into P5. Got ahead of D-Mort, so I think Do Will from restarting last down in all the way down in 8th, already up, giving a few gifts, making a few overtakes, and right here back in the thick of it, looking to close back up to Jay Willis, but of course has a 3.5 second gap to go to that. So, but still a good restart from him there in that Haas. And Jay Willis now chasing Jordan in the process. But like you said, similar to what we saw before the safety car, some of the gaps are starting to form, and drivers are essentially in this battle with one or two other drivers at the most here as we're starting lap 9 in this Grand Prix. But Nazareth doing what he has to do in the lead, keeping that gap consistent to Dark off the restart. And right now, I'm gonna knock on wood here before saying this. Looks like it may or may not be his race to lose here in this stage of the Grand Prix.
So Nazareth leading this Grand Prix at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, and not a lot of too many battles going on track at the moment. The gaps are quite large. About a second is the smallest we have right now. Dark is trying to catch up to Nazareth. As you can see there, the rear end of that car did get a little unstable, and looks like Dark may be able to catch up to Nazareth if he continues to make those mistakes. But as you said, it's his race to lose. It's very difficult to make overtake passes in this Grand Prix. So we'll see if any of the drivers can have a late lunge, much like we saw Kam Koala try to make. Looks like Will made that kind of pass. But nonetheless, Jay Wills in 4th position, 1.1 seconds back. Now Dark is actually within a second. Now there's no DRS because of the rain, so unfortunately he is not going to have that advantage of the rear wing, but he still has his ERS, he still has the engine power, and I think Jordan, he has had a spin.
Yep.
Jordan a spin, and he's going reverse on track, trying to spin the car around, and he's been disqualified. Jordan, I was afraid that was going to happen. He was going backwards a little bit too much to spin the car back around, and that's it for Jordan, disqualified from the Hungarian Grand Prix. I don't want to be too mean, but a bit of a rookie mistake, I think, there. Jordan should be well aware of the fact that this game can be very trigger-happy reversing on track, even with a spin around. Unfortunately for him, he is out of this Hungarian Grand Prix. Not much he could do about that.
No, really. I mean, I do have to agree with you. A bit of a rookie mistake from the veteran driver, because of course this has been something that I would like to think all the drivers have been well aware of over the course of this installment of the game, last installment of the game, that you really can't be going the wrong way here. And they do not give you much room in order to get that done. You're much better off just popping that into reverse, getting back on track, and going the right way from there to try to get back. But unfortunately for Jordan, and I'll be honest, unfortunately for us here in the commentator's booth, that is one extra driver out of this race in these early stages. But I'm looking here, it looks like Will, though, trying to possibly take it upon himself to give us at least a little bit of action. He's been able to close that gap up to Jay Willis very quickly, down to half a second. So we'll see if he can find the acceleration around the final corner, maybe use a little bit of that battery that he's got a lot of in the tank to maybe make a lunge down into turn 1. But at least initially, it looks like Jay Willis is got that slight better acceleration, and I think the positions are going to remain unchanged, at least for now here, starting lap 11 out of 35.
Yeah, he's very close to the back, and look at this. He's going to go side by side if the Alpine looks like coming into the turn. So close. Front wing right there. Back on the power, and it looks like Jay Will still might have the position coming through the turn. Jay Will still has it, but he goes very wide. Now CRL Will is going to try to hang it around the outside. Not a normal overtaking position, but he gets the move. Showstopper of an overtake from Will. Jay Wills, meanwhile, almost hits the back of him. But what a move from Will around the outside on lap 11 up into the podium positions. What a overtake.
Oh my goodness, I have to agree with you 100%. What an overtake from Will, and honestly, that's some of the magic that we know deep down Will can do. We know he has that in him, and I know last season, that was, I feel like that was some of the magic that might have just been lacking from, I mean, at the time, the Red Bull driver, but seems to have found that charm here early on in Division 2, making moves like that. And if that's what we can expect to see from Duwil with this upcoming season, I'm really excited to see his drives once the season kicks off for real next week. But oh no, I think Kom Koala had a moment and a
Oh
half,
man, and he's
and
out.
he is now out of this race. So, and that's
We're
going to
down
bring
to
out another safety
we're
car.
down to 6 drivers in this very wet Hungarian Grand Prix, and I have to tell you, Fallen, it's been pretty sloppy driving, I think, so far. I know that it's a new game. I know we're still settling in, but a lot of mistakes in this preseason. Good to get it out now, but it's not been a very it's not been a very productive day for many of the drivers, and they've had some very silly mistakes, some big incidents so far, and they need to get that all settled up before the actual season begins if they have any chance of making a championship fight this season.
Oh yeah, definitely a little bit of ironing out to do between today and next week. Although I'm sure here in preseason, I don't think too many drivers were expecting to find full wet weather conditions here for the race, which I think is amplifying the difficulty here. Of course, really getting thrown into the deep end where a lot of the drivers, like we saw in Division 4, conditions like this here in Division 2, and at least from what you were saying, Clark, it was a wet weather race in Division 3, so definitely creating that added level of difficulty that seems to be maybe getting the best of a lot of drivers here this week.
So we're back under safety car. It's lap 12 of 35. I had a feeling this was going to be a bit of a longer race as Nazareth, he almost has the Grosjean of a lifetime and almost put it in the wall right there. The car very unstable from the rear end, but he keeps it alive. But at the moment, we are under safety car here today, and it is Nazareth in the lead, Dark in second, Duwil in third position. He's had some amazing pace in the wet conditions here. I'm looking on board. It's still looking pretty heavy out there. I don't think we'll be moving to inter tires anytime soon. I think we'll be going for wet tires pretty much the whole race. But that makes this Hungarian Grand Prix just quite a bit longer than it normally is, I have to say.
Oh yeah, definitely with the longer lap times, just generally here in the wets, it does make it longer. Of course, with the safety cars and I mean a little bit of the lack of action, given the lack of drivers remaining on the track, it is making it just a tiny little bit longer, like you said. But I think Duwil is going to be a driver I'm going to want to look out for here under the safety car restart. Of course. The last safety car, he was all the way down in 8th position, and we were talking about him being in no man's land, seemingly having no chance of finding his way back up the grid. But now, look at where he is just a couple laps later here, running in 3rd, and with the safety car having bunched up the grid, it's essentially brought him right back into the running to possibly try to snag a 2nd place or even a 1st place, and to give these top 2 a little bit of something to fight after, which in turn could make things hopefully a little bit more exciting for us in the commentator's booth as well. But it looks like for the time being we're going to have one more lap here around the Hungaroring under safety car before we go back to green flag racing with Nazareth leading the charge. Nazareth and Dark both having a pretty solid race here thus far, just honestly doing what they have to do, keeping clean, just sticking to their lines, and they've been the 2 biggest benefactors here so far. As we're not quite there, but approaching the midway point of this race. But now with the grid bunched up the way it is, I do want to keep an eye out on Duwil, but it truly is, could be anybody's race to take here. Because of course, under the safety car restart, anything can happen, as we've seen time and time again here, especially in these type of conditions.
So we're still under safety car, ladies and gentlemen. It's lap 14 of 35. As you said, we do just expect one more safety car, and we should be able to get underway here in the session. So Thank you so much for joining us live. If you are 11 of you right now on the stream, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have all of the viewers here today. And if you're watching, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to ISRL Esports. Thank you to all of our partners at Advanced Sim Racing and IMB Raceware, Jackson Protection Agency, and IFEA. You guys are what help us continue to bring amazing action to all of our drivers. Thank you to all the drivers who are participating today in the preseason race. And thank you to all the viewers at home who make the streams a lot more interesting, both for the commentators and for the drivers themselves. We are under safety car here in the Division 2 race in the preseason, and the safety car is in this lap. So there goes the red CrowdStrike AMG Mercedes, and Nazareth is now going to be the pace setter, and we'll see how he gets underway on this restart. Car coming around the penultimate turn. Nazareth getting ready. Dark right there in the wings. Let's right on board of Dark, and he's still not very close to Nazareth. I have to say Dark has not been really capitalizing too well on his restarts, and as we get underway in this race, 1.1 seconds the gap from Nazareth to Dark, and once again, that's really been a thorn for Dark. He has just not had great restarts. Nobody really had a good restart. They were all back except for Lorenzo. Lorenzo right on the back of Demorts. He's going very wide out of turn 1. And that's going to cost him a bit of time coming down into turn number 3. As he's trying to keep it back. And he has a little bit of a moment, gets on the curb a little bit there, and he's just trying to keep it behind, but that dirty air is hurting him. Sorry, back to you.
No worries. I was just saying, Demorts, maybe not having the best restart or a standard restart compared to everybody else. Lorenzo was right along the back, but just was unable to capitalize on that better run into turn 1. Just ran out of room to really try to lunge one down the inside, and from there, just not able to put that car in the right position to capitalize on the few mistakes Demorts is making with what I can only assume is cold tires off of this safety car restart. But now they're both getting into it, and it seems like they're both catching up to Jay Willis, but that little half moment from Demorts isn't going to help, as now Lorenzo once again thought about making a run, but once again just didn't quite have enough straight line to get that run done. So through all of that, things are remaining unchanged here in the back of the order, similarly to what we're seeing in the front of the grid here.
It's a mistake, I think, that's going to have to happen for these drivers to make a nice overtake here, as Lorenzo is trying. He's using all that overtake. The overtake does not run down as much while in the wet conditions, and it gains a lot quicker as well. But just look at that. Just absolutely no time gained, even with the overtake. I'm sure Demorts as well using exactly the same. And actually now Lorenzo has more of a mistake of his own. Demorts is the only driver currently on track of a penalty. As we go on the details here, it is a 5-second time penalty, so I believe it is that safety car collision that Demorts has. And the only driver to make a stop at the moment, though, so far on the track is Duwill. Cozy did make a stop after that wing damage, but Duwill currently right now, one of the only drivers of a pit stop that was due to the wing damage that he received. So we're on 16 to 35. Lorenzo is still very much back on the back of Demorts. Nazareth is holding off Dark, who's back by about 0.6 of a second, maybe sizing up an overtake within the next couple laps. Meanwhile, I think there's been a problem. Nazareth has had a big off, and Dark has taken the lead. As we've been saying, Nazareth has not looked very comfortable after the couple of restarts that he's had, and Dark has taken the lead. Looks like Nazareth had a moment, and he kept the car on track, but he's down in P2 at the moment.
Yeah, and it looked like right on the exit of the right-hander, right at the end of Sector 2, I think Nazareth losing the car, going a little bit wide off the exit, trying to keep that car in one piece. Does survive that, so no wing damage, no extra pit stop for him, but a lot of time lost, and that was all Dark needed to capitalize and take that lead here at the end of lap 16. And it goes back to like you were saying, and I think like we said a couple times, overtakes are going to be relying on mistakes from other drivers, and that is exactly what happened, and Dark capitalized on that, like we were saying.
So CRL Duwill sitting in third position, has not had the same kind of success so far in the wet conditions. Lorenzo has picked up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. That's the first multiple warnings penalties we've had so far, so that's for track extension. We do find drivers, it's a lot more difficult necessarily really to get those kind of penalties in the wet because drivers are so focused on just keeping it just at least in the middle of the track. They just want to be on the pavement, on the road. So first 3-second time penalty, that goes to Lorenzo. Nazareth has picked up now a 3-second time penalty. A little more costly for him, as that could hurt his chances of winning this Grand Prix. He is getting back up to the back of Dark. Dark now is having problems of his own. Surprisingly enough, drivers with clean air, like Dark, in the lead of this race, having a lot of trouble keeping the car on the track. Maybe just pushing a little bit too hard. Meanwhile, Jay Wills is into the pit lane, and we may start to see those first set of pit stops to move off of the first set of wet tires. Remember, Will did pit, but they only pitted because of the wing damage. These wet weather tires, these first set they put on at the start of the race, are going to start to see the end of their lifespan, and we may start to see ISRL Dark, Nazareth, and others react to that pit stop and see if they can find themselves a new set of wet tires and go till the end of this race. There was an ability for a two-stop strategy. I highly doubt that's going to be the situation for any driver who has not yet made a pit stop. So Will may be making a two-stop, but I even think possibly that's probably unlikely. I think a one-stop strategy is viable around here. Pretty much any track really viable for wets on a one-stop.
But one of the things I do want to mention, at least as far as Will is concerned, is that everybody, essentially, other than Jay Willis on those 17-lap-old hard tires, Will, he's on 13-lap-old tires. He pit very early on, seemingly 4 laps in. So it is a question I think Will might be asking himself, and I'm going to ask this to you as well. If you're Will, knowing that you pit because of the wing damage, you've essentially caught up, you're back in this race. Do you want to risk going essentially 31 laps or 30 laps on that same set of wet tires? Or do you just want to bite the bullet, pit with everybody else, be on that similar set of tires, and just run on pure pace afterwards? Especially now with the gap that these top 3 have started to build up to the rest of the grid, the likes of D. Mortz, Lorenzo, and now Jay Willis after that pit stop.
Well, Will can definitely pit if we bring up the gap interval. So if he pits now, Will, he would come out most likely ahead of, well, he would definitely come out ahead of Jay Wills, I think, at the bare minimum. But it would still be close because of the wet. I think it's risky because you're just kind of, the only real reason Will could have a good outcome out of pitting again for another set of wet tires is whether or not a safety car comes out again, because that, of course, would bunch up the pack. The whole point of a safety car and a pit stop would be pointless. So the gaps are not too much of a concern if there's a safety car. If there's not one, then Will could have some trouble. And I'm going to be honest with you, 14 laps versus 18 laps on the wets, it's not that much of a difference in terms of wear. The feel is very much the same. So I would suspect that Will should not pit, because I just think you can't just hope for a safety car and make blind decisions like that. It's kind of like underfueling your car a lot and just expecting there to be a safety car. If there's a clean race, you could be out of the race because you didn't finish it, because the only time you can put in lean, and Jay Wills has left the session. So unfortunately, I think if Will is going to make a pit stop, it better be now, because that gap's going to increase, and Will has an opportunity to at least get up into at least stay ahead in 5th position.
Oh no! But
Nazareth!
He had a big crash on the exit of turn 2. I was riding with him, and just completely got a little bit too anxious on the power, leaving turn 1, I should say, going into that little kink, and just losing the car. And at that point, he was just a passenger hoping for the best. Hit that wall, and that is the end of Nazareth's race. And there's that safety car once again coming out, and essentially going to neutralize the race. So I think, to run on your point, I think now we might see the likes of Will pit, assuming that Dark ahead of him is going to dive into the pits along with everybody else.
At this point it's smart, because Dark and Will and D. Mortz and everyone else, they pretty much, Dark, Will, and D. Mortz and Lorenzo, They have to make pit stops because those 19 lap old wet tires need to get off them, and I think Nazareth is a perfect example of that because those tires are starting to see the end of their lifespan. Will maybe doesn't necessarily have to stop, but if he wants to keep up with competitive pace, he should stop, even if the tires are going to be on same pace as the rest. I think that it really depends if we see a pit stop here, and I think we are. Yep, Dark coming into the pit lane, and I think Will is going to follow suit. No, he is not. I think that's a mistake. That's a mistake. Will is going to have some trouble. He's going to get the lead of this race. I know we're under wet conditions, but when is he going to make that pit stop is the real question now, because this race is not going to finish in time where he's going to be at only 19 laps. He's going to be much further into his tire life. I think he should have pitted with the rest to stay within the pack, because now you don't want to make another pit stop under safety car. I assume he can because he'll just be in 5th position at that point, but still, you just now have to hope you can make up those positions. I think that he should have came in with the rest. I know it's a little bit newer tires. He may prove me wrong, but I think that's a little bit of a mistake from Will, who is now on very old wet tires. And if he does not make a pit stop during the safety car, then I really don't understand the strategy there, and he's going to get really eaten up alive.
Yeah, and that's I do have to agree with you on that, because I was under the mindset that Will was going to pit along with everybody else just to put himself back on that similar tire strategy to not end up on, what would it be, 16 extra lap old wet tires coming near the end of the race, and possibly starting to see any gap that he could have built, whether we had a safety car or not, start to close up near the end of the race.
I don't even think he'd get 16 extra laps. I think the tires would blow up at that point.
Yeah,
they're pretty tough, the wet tires, but they're not that tough. So I'd expect the tires would have blown up at that point. But Will has to make his pit stop now. If he does not make the pit stop under the safety car, this is really a mistake in my point of view. And if there's not a safety car again for him, this can really just turn to be a bad race for him. I understand there's only 5 drivers, so it's not like you're losing too much. You're still going to finish at bare minimum 5th position. But I would expect that he's going to be regretting this. He does not pit again, so I would presume there's no intention to make a pit stop, and we'll see if it works out for him, but I'm thinking this was a bad decision from Will. Dark is going to be all over him on this restart.
Yeah, and it is something that I do understand to an extent where Will is coming from, because even in my own experience as a driver, I do feel like the wet weather tires, well, they don't wear as quickly in my own personal experience than, let's say, the drier tire counterparts. They can go much longer, and they tend to feel a little bit more comfortable. They tend to hit this point of extra grip, I find, the more laps I run with them. But the question is, how long is that going to last before they really start to hit their cliff, and you might as well just be on slick tires rather than that set of worn out wet tires. But of course, with only 5 drivers, it's not going to be too much of a loss. But I think it's really going to depend on how the restart is going to go for everybody, whether or not everybody is going to stay bunched up together like they are under the safety car, or whether or not these gaps are going to start to form once again off the restart, which could give a little bit more leeway for Will to pit and not lose out on as much as he would, compared to if he pit, let's say, now under the safety car, or a lap or 2 after the safety car comes in.
So safety car still out. Will currently the leader of this Grand Prix. Whether or not we'll see if that was the right decision, but from all known race knowledge, it probably isn't, given that his tires are going to be quite old and the rest are very new. They're going to have a lot of grip on their hands. Safety car is in this lap. The only thing you could possibly say is that because Will's tires are a little older and they've been running a little longer, he may have more temperature in his tires at the start, but that's really a big maybe. But meanwhile, the CrowdStrike AMG goes into the pit lane. Will is about to get underway. He's coming around the final turn right there. Dark is trying to follow as close as he can. 0.6 of a second now. It's been a much better restart than before, and he's now within a second. We'll see how Do Will gets underway. We're back under green flag racing. Lap 23 out of 35 in this Hungarian Grand Prix. It's Division 2, and it's Season 5. We're in the preseason race at the Hungaroring. And ISRL Dark is in second position, Lorenzo in third position, J. Wills in fourth, D-Morts is down there in fifth position, last at the moment. We've had a lot of crashes in this battle, ladies and gentlemen, but Ciro Do Will still leading. The big question is, will we see that gap slowly drop between Dark and Do Will? Has Do Will made a mistake? And I think he has, because when is he going to make that pit stop? Because he has to make that pit stop, in my opinion. There's just no way Do Will is going to finish this race on a set of tires that old.
No, well, that's sort of what I'm thinking too. He's gonna have to take that pit stop. I think at this point, maybe
and
just
look at
hoping
this.
for.
Dark is really closing up on him.
Yeah, and as much as they're creating a gap between Dark and Lorenzo, that gap isn't growing nearly as much as I thought it would. Given what we've seen previously after these safety car restarts, the drivers are still relatively bunched together, all considered, which might not be what what Do Will was ideally hoping for. But we'll have to see how it all plays out. But for all we know, preseason could be a little bit of a testing ground for Do Will, maybe trying to get a little bit of data to see realistically how far these wet tires can go, and if he can run them, because I do know Do Will sort of likes to do this strategy, especially when he takes early wing damage. Just even in the dry, slap on a set of hard tires and just go as long as he possibly can, literally until the tires explode on him. Sometimes it works out, other times it doesn't, so we'll see how it's going to play out here for him, if that is indeed what he's trying to do. And he does have the benefit of clean air in front of him, leading this race for the time being. But like you were saying, Clark, Dark is really closing up that gap under a half a second. But now for Dark, the question is more, when is he going to be able to get that overtake done? Can he get it done down that start-finish straight, or is he going to try to maybe go for something a little bit more daring here through into sector 2, or maybe even into sector 3?
But meanwhile, this battle is backing up the pack. Lorenzo now is right in the thick of it. Could we see Lorenzo get into this battle here and maybe even make a double overtake if the drivers aren't too careful here, because the wet can really bring out the worst of you in a driver and really bring out all the mistakes. So it's a three-way battle right now for first position. Lorenzo is right there. Dark is in it as well. Do Will is the leader. Oh, Lorenzo. He's now had a full spin, and so is D-Morts.
One too.
Two spins at the back, and D-Mort's still last. Lorenzo's lost a position. J. Wills in the Alpine, who has had a pretty poor qualifying, is now in third position. So Knight, he's out of the race, but J. Wills might be able to pick up the scraps a little bit for Alpine and get a nice preseason podium if he's so inclined. But meanwhile, Dark is still right there, 0.5 of a second, still following the back of Do Will. And this is getting very interesting in the closing stages of this race. We have 11 laps to go in this Hungarian Grand Prix. We're almost near the end of it, ladies and gentlemen. Do Will and Dark duking it out for the lead of this race. It's 0.4 of a second now. The second sector clearly the weakest for Do Will. May we see an overtake? Will we see a dive from the Mercedes driver on the Haas driver? Because if he doesn't make a mistake, a dive may be what's necessary to get ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Do Will, that the struggling with the sector 2, I think has everything to do with those 20-lap-old wet weather tires that he has on, compared to only 3-lap-old tires that Dark has, which are probably, for Dark's sake, now really starting to get into that optimal tire temperature, starting to get that the initial struggles out of the way, and now starting to get back into the groove. Just going back on that half spin, Lorenzo, I think just having a little bit of a lapse of judgment, or a mental lapse going around the penultimate corner, just trying to get on the power a little bit too quickly and sending the rear of the car spinning into a drift, and at that point it was just a passenger. Thankfully, it didn't end as horribly as it probably could have, given what we've seen previously. But D-Morts, I'm not too sure really what happened to the Red Bull driver right behind, as I was still riding on board with Lorenzo. I don't know if you caught that on your end, but Right as I'm saying that, Lorenzo having another moment through into turn 1. Demortz nearly having a tank slapper, but able to save it there. But Demortz gets up into 4th, and Lorenzo now in a bit of a distant 5th after another costly mistake from the Haas driver there.
Yeah, it's been mistakes all around in these in this race. Many drivers not keeping it all settled. I think every driver at this point has had some sort of a accident or mistake. Somehow the drivers 1 through 5, Lorenzo, Demortz, J-Wills, Dark, and Duwell, somehow they've kept alive through their mistakes. But at the moment, look how close Dark is. This is going to be a battle for the lead of the race, but will Duwell make a pit stop before we see that battle ensue? Because 21 laps right now, he's been on those hard tires. You can't really see any degradation because of the rain, but I'm sure he's feeling it, and he's getting quite close to that pit lane, but he still does not make the pit stop. He's enjoying himself out there. We know it's a preseason race, but he wants to win this, and he wants to have a little bit of fun along the way. Can Dark get ahead? He has just set the fastest lap of this Grand Prix, so Dark is right in the thick of it, but he just can't quite get within range for an overtake at the end of the first straight right there. You can see he's not using a lot of overtake despite having a lot in the tank. Meanwhile, CRL Duwell is using quite a bit of it, so maybe Dark not using that battery power to his full advantage because he loses a lot more time down the straights than he necessarily does within the corners. Within the corners, he's right on the back of Duwell. Down the straights, not so much.
Yep, and I mean, through all of that, a little bit elsewhere on the track, Demortz, that gap is extended a little bit now, as he had a bit of a moment going through the final corner, a little similar to Knight, but not with nearly as many repercussions, just going for a spin, but getting that car back under control, back on his way. Lorenzo actually had a broken front wing somewhere along the way. I think that was due to that spin at the beginning of the lap. He takes his pit stop, gets that fresh front wing, but he is now running a race with himself here from now up until the end of the race. I don't think Lorenzo is going to be able to catch up, barring any crazy moments between now and the end of the race from other drivers.
So here we go. Dark is sizing him up now. 0.3 of a second is that gap. He's on the overtake. Can he get a run on Duwell? He's gaining. Is he going to make a dive? He looks to the inside, but just a little bit of a tickle of the inside. Duwell goes a little wide, and now Dark can cut close to him. 0.3 of a second, 0.2 of a second almost as they come down into turn number 3, but Duwell still has it. So even on these old tires, Dark still can't find a way past. This has been a very nice defense so far, but Dark still back behind Duwell.
Yeah, and for Dark's sake, he does have the benefit of being able to stick behind Duwell, not allowing that gap to grow. He's keeping it consistent right around 3 to 0.4 of a second, even through these more troublesome Sector 2, end of Sector 1, even Sector 3. Just, it seems like by the time they do get on that start-finish straight, the pace is a little bit similar from both drivers. But he does have a few laps to go, does Dark, to get the overtake done, and I think part of what Dark is trying to do now is maybe a little bit of mind games with Duwell, maybe making Duwell think that, hey, I'm gonna go for a lunge into turn 1, when realistically gonna hold back, try a little bit of a switchback move, and force Duwell into a mistake with those much more worn, wet tires. Maybe not through this lap, as Duwell doing what he had to do. Right as I say that, the gap has grown, but there is still some time from Dark's perspective to try to force Duwell into a mistake before resorting into, I should say, a little bit more desperate measures of just chucking it down the inside, going into turn 1 or into a corner.
ISRL Dark is in second position. He's actually lost a bit of time now. The gap almost a second. Is Dark's wet tires starting to see their competitive edge go away a little bit? He's still gaining in the second sector, but it's now 7 laps on those wet tires. Duwell, 24, you gotta mind you, is on a much more worn set. He's probably got little to no grip, and oh, he has a big big moment on the curb. He mounted the entire curb, and now Dark is right back up on the gearbox at Do Will. Those are the mistakes that can really ruin a wet weather race for you if you're not careful. And we have a yellow flag. I think it was Lorenzo again. Yeah, but he's still on track. 44 seconds back, though, in with 0 laps on there. And he has still a penalty to his name. Do Will, though, is starting to make some mistakes. Those wet tires are really starting to wane on him. And now, will we see an overtake? Look how close Dark is to the back of Do Will. Do Will is losing the grip lap after lap after lap. Oh, it's almost a spin, and Dark saves the car. But that saves Do Will. I think that's it. I think that might be it. If Do Will does not have a mistake, I think Do Will's winning it right here, because it doesn't look like he intends to make a pit stop. We're on lap 30 of 35, 25 laps on those wet tires, 1.8 seconds. I think that just sealed the deal. Dark, a big mistake from him, and like I just said, mistakes are what cause you to either win or lose a wet race, and I think we just saw the winner because of a different mistake from the man in second position.
Oh yeah, but the gap is still still only, I'm gonna say only 1.5 seconds, and Dark still has the much fresher tires, even with that mistake. But I do think that was Dark saying, this is it, this is the moment, this is where I'm gonna go for it. But just got a little bit too excited, just trying to get on the power quicker than Do Will, who's been just absolutely nailing the exit of the final corner lap after lap. But Dark just getting a little bit too much power, but thankfully able to save that car after getting close with the mistakes Do Will had made 1 lap ago. But we'll see how this is going to play out between now and the 5 laps. But Dark is going to have to be perfect and then some to close that gap back up and possibly get that overtake done from now and 5 laps from now. But already, as we're seeing, 1 lap later, the gap is back down to under a second, 0.8 of a second, and shortening now as Dark sets a purple third sector, a fastest sector 3. So he is a man on a mission, trying to catch up to that Haas of Do Will that he's been looking at that rear diffuser for so many laps now.
I called the win of the race. Is Do Will's tires really starting to see the edge of life? Are they near the end? Will we see a blowout possibly from Do Will? Very old tires on that Haas. I thought the gap would stay pretty far, but apparently has not. And Do Will is struggling, and Dark, despite a mistake, is still right back up in there.
Yep, and I mean, the gap stayed consistent right around 0.8 of a second, which could have maybe indicated Do Will might have left off a little bit, thinking that he had a little bit more of a cushion than what he actually had after that mistake. But Dark showing why he's up there in the timing tables, not because of the DNFs, but just because Dark's he's a really fast driver. We've seen it before, time and time again, and that's now a fastest sector 2 for Dark, as he is really flying now after that mistake. That might have been also could have just been what's kicking Dark into an extra gear now, trying to close up, realizing the I wouldn't say the desperation, but seeing the laps tick down as we're starting lap 32, and I think Dark now wants this more than ever as he sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, just as an extra indication to Do Will of, hey, I'm not out of this just yet. You better be prepared for these final 3 laps, because I'm coming at you, and I'm coming at you hard.
Lap 32 of 35 in the preseason. Do Will hanging on to dear life with those very old wet tires. Dark, much newer wet tires, is right in the thick of it. We're now going through the first sector and the second sector. This is where the time is lost for Do Will. Just does not have the same kind of grip, cannot carry the same kind of speed into these turns. And are we going to see Dark capitalize on one of these turns? Will Do Will make a costly mistake as he's coming through the chicane right here, not mounting the curb like we saw previous, and actually Dark must have made a mistake. He lost quite a bit of time in that chicane, because for all intents and purposes, if they have clean runs, you know which driver is going to come out on top in these kind of conditions. It's going to be Dark. The grip is just so much more there. And oh, another possible big spin. Has that cost him? Another mistake from Dark. He's under pressure, and he is the one making the big mistakes in this one. Now 1.2 seconds is that gap. And more importantly, that's going to be on the straight where we've seen Dark tend to lose time. As now Demorts has a 3-second time penalty, so the penalty is starting to fly in. Only Dark and Do Will are men without penalties in this race. 1 second the gap, gaining a little bit more time than I would have thought, but Dark is back by 9/10 of a second. I just don't think it's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. I think Demorts, I think, has had a spin, and I think he has lost the front wing, so Demorts, a bad end to a pretty disappointing Grand Prix for him. But I just don't see it. I think the gap is too big. I don't think he's ever really found an opportunity to truly make a dive for an overtake unless there's a big mistake from somebody, and Do Will's been pretty decently enough. He's been pretty clear and pretty clean. I think that Do Will is going to be winning this Grand Prix. I just don't see Dark making an overtake. Despite the pace advantage, it's just too difficult. As you said, Monaco without walls. The walls are not there, but the danger of an overtake and the possibility of a crash are still very much there as well.
Oh yeah, and I think for Dark, with that the mistake he made earlier on, heading down towards the start-finish straight, that one was recoverable. But I think as where he's coming through right now, that that little half slide, that drift around, I think that was the mistake. That was the nail in the coffin that essentially called the race right then and there. Barring, or this is all assuming that Do Will doesn't make a mistake of his own between now and the end of the race on those what is soon to be 29-lap-old wet weather tires. But looking at Do Will, looking at the way he's been racing, he's been managing those tires. He's been just doing what he has to do, being perfect around every corner. And Dark, as much as he's got another fastest lap to his name, really up along the rear diffuser. We've seen this position many times before, but Dark just has been unable to capitalize, been unable to just go for the overtake, just put that car alongside and hope for the best. And I think this might be the way the race is going to end, especially with another mistake like that. That is going to mean even more time loss for Dark.
So, lap 34-35, penultimate lap in this race, and Dark just has not been able to do it. So will we see a mistake? Maybe even a penalty surprise. Do Will. 29 laps. You have to give it to the lad. We doubted him before. We thought it couldn't happen. But Do Will is looking to secure a win in this preseason race, putting Haas on the top step of the podium. It's not something they're going to see in this season, I believe. But at the moment, Do Will looking very, very strong, and he's going to put up that totally American flag inspired Haas livery up onto the top step of the podium. He just has one more lap to navigate, one more lap of no mistakes. I know the commentator's curse is absolutely flowing over, and I could possibly have some messages, some mean messages in my Discord messages if I get this wrong. But here's the final lap of the Grand Prix, and Dark just can't make the run in the turn one. And I don't think he's going to be making it in the turn 3, and that could basically be it for him unless Do Will has a very costly mistake. The rear is really stepping out from the back of Dark, and Do Will, it's too close, and now he's mounting the curb a little bit. There is Dark, but he's having a very nice run, keeping on board with the Mercedes driver. Now on the outboarders, they're coming into the blind left-hand turn blind left-hand turn. How close is Dark? 0.5 of a second as they're coming towards the end of the first sector. And it's just not enough. 0.6 of a second, now 0.5 of a second through the chicane. Any mistakes? No, that's actually perfect through the chicane. Do Will handled that beautifully. The gap is closing, but there's just nowhere to make an overtake. Will Dark go for a lunge on this last lap? Does he want to risk it, or will he just pick up that podium? We have to wait and see. 0.4 of a second now. It's so very close between the two. But Do Will looking to capture the victory. Pretty much just one more overtaking position to go here, and I just don't think he's going to have it done. Do Will is coming around the penultimate turn, and this could be it, ladies and gentlemen. Do Will navigates around the penultimate turn. They're so neck and close. 0.3 of a second around the final turn. So close from Dark. But Do Will comes around the final turn. He's going to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. Dark in second position. J Wills 12 seconds back. He's going to finish third in his debut race here in Division 2, and that is good for him. Alpine on the podium. Knight unfortunately couldn't join him. Lorenzo will finish in fourth, and Demorts will finish in fifth in this race. 55 seconds back was Lorenzo. Demorts 3 seconds back, unless a mistake from Lorenzo in the last couple of moments here. But CRL Duwil has won the preseason Hungarian Grand Prix.
Yeah, honestly, a clinical drive from Duwil after taking that pit stop early, and I'll be honest, I had my doubts on the Haas driver. I didn't think he was going to make it to the end on those 31-lap old wet tires, but he definitely proved me wrong, and not only that, but showed that he can keep that car under control. He can play the defensive game with those much more worn tires, but I do think, I think for Dark on the other end of that, it's still a solid P2 for him. But I think it left to be remains of what could have been for the Mercedes driver, as he came close on a few occasions, but just not close enough here in this preseason race. But congratulations to Duwil, Dark, and Jay Wills on the podium. A solid drive all around from them here today.
I don't know if Lorenzo's going to be agreeing he's driver of the day, because he had a pretty tough race, and no. At least there's no Schumacher on the podium, but I hate this emote. This emote stinks. I'd rather have some stupid Fortnite dance. But anyway, Casper Ackerman wins the Grand Prix, ladies and gentlemen. Nonetheless, that was the preseason race. A very wet Hungarian Grand Prix. A Haas on the podium, an Alpine on the podium, and a Mercedes on the podium. It was almost Hungary all over again. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. There is your winner. It's CRL Duwil, a very old CRL Duwil on the podium, with ISRL Dark in second, third for Jay Wills, Demorts in fifth, Lorenzo in sixth, and it's all DNFs from there. Nazareth, Kam Koala, Jordan, Cozy, Knight, and Krishna do not finish in this Grand Prix. They had accidents of their own, and unfortunately, that is it for them in this Division 2 race. But thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Viasar Clark. I was joined by Fallen Monkeys in the commentator's booth. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate all the love and support. There's a Div 1 race coming up in just a couple of moments' time. See the fastest in ISRL compete around the Hungaroring. Hopefully they can have a dry race so we can have some nice action. Thank you so much for joining us. This is ISRL Esports signing off. We'll be back live in just a few moments' time with Division 1 action around the Hungaroring for Season 5 preseason.